Hey guys, welcome to design process video number 6. This is all about design development. So we went over concept, mood boards, color, texture, fabric, shape, proportion. And now that we have all these elements, remember from the very beginning, it's all about vague concepts and ideas and making things more and more concrete and specific as we go. So we have all these elements going on right now, and now we're going to be putting them together into specific designs. And I'm going to show you guys a few ways to develop your ideas further off of your main concept. So to recap the example project that I created for you guys, this was the Luxe Utility project. And it was all about luxurious interiors and furnishings, and the concept of furnishings and interiors being unisex, and to translate that into a functional yet luxurious unisex clothing collection. And then we had, or I had, excuse me, collected all of these fabrics. I did some knit samples, played with 2 different color stories, a cool one and a warm one. We played with shapes and proportions, and I went over how you can develop those things last time around. So I'm going to show you just a few of the sketches that I just slammed out for this project. So playing with the fabrics that I had, the furs, the knits, the mesh, the Wolff, the tailoring. I'm not going to sit here and explain every single one because I feel that I've explained how I've been approaching designing. At this stage, I'm not super concerned with making all the sketches look like a cohesive collection. Of course, I'm following the same concept, fabrics, color, everything. But even within that scope, there are so many things that you can do. There are still several directions you can take. And at this stage, I'm exploring all those avenues. Like I'm here, I have something that's really sporty. It's actually veering a little bit to spring, summer, and not so much fall, winter. And then here, it's getting a little less unisex and a little bit more sexy. This is getting a little bit too sexy. And then, so I started pulling back to more of that unisex concept with the vests and the mesh paneling. Here with the giant overcoats with the huge pockets and the complicated knit sweaters and the trousers. And I really got into quilting. I was putting styles on children's croquis, male croquis, female croquis, like all over the place, and playing with different twists with the knit and the fur together, and creating basic shapes and silhouettes based off of my fabric board, etc., etc. If you visit my mood board again, which you should do at this stage in your design project, remember the things that appeal to you. Remember the things that you wanted to keep in mind for later. For example, I was really into the quilting. I wanted to definitely play with the quilting. I wanted to play with metallics. I wanted to play with this sort of stained glass idea of fitting geometric shapes together. I wanted to play with this sort of like a lot of these verticals, whether they're going this way or they're intersecting at angles, this idea of geometric shapes repeating, and then geometric shapes repeating and being kind of cut out as opposed to just keeping the squares intact. So I wanted to play with these ideas, and that's why I have the tracing paper to accentuate those particular ideas as notes to self. At this stage, I would go research ways that I can take these loose concepts and bring them to real life with fabrics. I have here a stack of 1 billion books. I have kind of an insane library. Don't tell my husband that I admitted that my library is insane. If he asks, my library is entirely too small and it needs way more things. So I'm going to drop the title and the author's name in the info box for the books that I go over today. And feel free to check them out at your nearest neighborhood bookstore. This one is super fantastic. It is called The Art of Manipulating Fabric by Colette Wolff. And this is insane. She did all these crazy samples in muslin and took pictures and showed the process of how to do them. And she goes over all these crazy stuffed appliques and quilting methods, stuffing. Here's machine quilting. This is corded quilting, where you take the cords and then you sew around them to create these textures and designs. All these are tucks in patterns. Look at that. Seamless tucks, reverse tucks, partially seamed tucks, or called release tucks, 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 cross stitch tucks. Those are so cool. Shell tucks, tucks in a circle, tucks going both directions so that you are creating a three-dimensional plaid, or you can make it zigzaggy. This book is just amazing because not only are there a million ideas, but it really shows you the technical of how to do these things. English smocking, how cool is that? And the cool thing is there are so many really clear pictures that if you incorporate any of these ideas into your designs, you have an excellent example of how to draw them. Flounces, ruffles, pleats, all that good stuff. Woo! What is that? A sawtooth pattern in pattern shearing. What? That's cool. This book is called Fashioning Fabrics, Contemporary Textiles and Fashion, edited by Sandy Black. And this one is a great picture book showing things that designers have done with fabrics. And so they're organized by the designer and then organized by section. This is the embellished section. And the one I really wanted to show you is this. This is a designer I've never heard of before. But I love the concept of taking something that is a classic, the pearl. And we have distinct associations with pearls. We think they are classic, classy, elegant, possibly a little bit old lady, if you're not careful. We have ideas of vintage, old school couture. But then you see it done like this, which is insane and magical and beautiful and crazy, and you rethink the pearl completely. And I encourage you guys not to take a single material or type of trim and take it at face value. Be like, oh, this is old fashioned, or we're not doing that anymore, or that's too arts and craftsy. See beyond the preconceived notion or reputation of a single item and push it into a new space. I love that. Okay. But this is a really fantastic book showing just, whew, look at that. Just amazing things that you can do with fabrics. Like if you look at these designs from Kenzo, the silhouettes are fairly basic, right? Here's a tiered, simple dress, very loose with the cape, A-line dress with a coat. but it's really the textures and the patterns and the colors coming together to really create the flavor. If you watch the interview with Dae Kim, we talked about how in school they encourage a lot of fabric and fiber manipulation and processes, and how it's harder to do that in the real world because you can't be doing everything handmade. Unless that is, you keep things small and that's the goal of your business, is to do one-of-a-kind handmade things. But for the most part, if you're a designer and you are interested in mass production, you have to find ways to make things mass producible. So to push yourself as creatively as possible, but to also find a real world producible way of bringing your vision to life. And so sometimes these kinds of books are really good in that, oh, hey, maybe I didn't know that you could do that. Okay. It's this constant balance between pushing yourself and then maybe just not getting too crazy because, you know, somebody still has to make these and you still have to stay in your price bracket. And so you're kind of constantly juggling back and forth to find that nice little balance. And you will find that there are certain things that can be done that you didn't think were producible and are actually quite easy to do on a machine. And vice versa. You might also think, oh, this is so easy. Why doesn't it exist? And you will find that it exists, but you have to pay, you know, $100 a yard at a 5,000 yard minimum for it. Okay. So do your research. This is the Surface Texture Bible by Cap Martin. And this is not a fashion book. This is this awesome book I picked up when I was visiting a good friend in Cleveland. She took me to this amazing little bookstore. This book is just textures. Like, they don't give a crap about fashion. It's mostly about interiors, but even then, you know, you could easily turn this into a print. I think that's fantastic. It's just a 3-color print. This faded vermilion, blue, and cream ecru. And these wood grains. Look at this texture. That would make a fantastic print. You know, how would you create? Like, look at this. Like, how would you develop this into fabric? Because I think just this image by itself, without knowing what it is stunning. To take this slate blue fabric, do I panel some laces to get this texture? And then to run top stitching to get these black lines? Or do I do lines of black beading, asymmetrical black beading with teeny tiny little beads to create this overall look? Like, what do? You could do a million things. You know, don't just be inspired by fashion or fashion books. And go out there, go look at other things. This is Digital Textile Design by Melanie Bowles and Ceri Isaac. Sorry if I butchered that. So creating your own prints is a way to distinguish yourself. Creating your own prints is probably one of the least expensive ways to create something exclusive to you and make your design special. And you know, with technology the way it is, you can do all kinds of engineered or placed prints. And what that means is creating prints where the print will be placed precisely in the design somewhere. Okay? Like, if you look at this, it has been engineered so that this chandelier will sit at the top of the blouse when it's cut out like that on every blouse. And then on this jacket, the sleeve and front panel pieces will be cut so that the print creates this arcing shape when it's sewn together. Here are some more examples where the placement of the print is really important for the proportions and the overall look. Having this image asymmetrically coming off from the side. These are examples of trompe-l'oeil. Trompe-l'oeil is a French expression that means trick of the eye. So sometimes you'll see these sweater dresses, right? Where it kind of looks like the person is wearing several layers of knits into this cool outfit, but actually it's just color blocked one layer sweater. Okay. Look at this shirt. This shirt has been printed with this engineered print that looks like feathers, but it's a print. Oh, it's not feathers. It's the haircut shirt. It's supposed to look like hair all over his shoulders. And then this looks like crack paint all over, but it's actually a print. And so this is another one of those things where if you were playing with hand painting things in the design stage, how can you translate that to real life? Well, what if you created a trompe-l'oeil print and you created this kind of crackle paint surface, but it's actually on a very slinky, smooth fabric? Of course, there's lots of interesting prints you can do. This is great because this also tells you like how to do these things in Illustrator, as well as explain the different kinds of prints that you can work on. And then I love these because they're kind of crazy. You know, it's not like a steady all over print. Okay? It's just like these random pieces that have been printed on, and then there's a print with an embroidery on top. This is Knitwear Design by Carol Brown. This is also a really fantastic book, and it goes through inspiration, different kinds of knits. It defines great terminology, has a glossary in the back, shows you a million process images of designers and how they think and how they work, interviews with various knitwear designers, and tons of runway shots to show you the finished products, and talking about different colors and yarns and illustrations. This is such a delicious book. Every time I look at it, I notice something new. So just a couple of bookmarks I want to show you to not forget to play with multiple materials. Like you don't have to just create a cool knit and then call it a day, or knit with 2 separate yarns and call it a day. But here we are using buttons as embellishment on top of knits. Here we are taking tubular knits, creating flowers with another knit on top with strings of beads. So yeah, like bring different materials together to create your own unique effect. But oh, look at this book. Oh, so pretty. And then I love this, just to like remind students constantly to put things on the form. As you're creating these samples, I want you to constantly be putting your samples on the form so that you see how it scales on the body. Okay, because looking at it something and just being like, oh, that's cool, and then actually putting on a body and be like, oh, that just looks really, really small and ineffectual. It looked really cool in the sample, but you're just looking at one sample. But when you put it on the body and you step back about 6 feet, you can't really see any of the details. Maybe I need to make everything bigger. Okay, so constantly remember to put things on a dress form. And then this, I love this little corner here because you see this designer working with this partial knitting effect. And then draping it, actually creating a sample and draping it based off her original sketches. And also playing with the scale. Okay. So you want to play with the scale and design around it. And then you see how this sleeve is this sleeve. Like she created the muslin top part of the sleeve and then did these partial knitting pieces and then actually pinned them onto the dress form to see how it would look in real life. Because the whole point of this stage is to see how your designs are going to look in real life before you put in the effort to cut the pattern and pay for the pattern making, okay? You want to do these things at this stage when you're still experimenting and you can control costs and you can control the outcome before you go and do your final editing and get these things made. I don't care how good of an illustrator you are. Even me, there are times where I'll draw something and the physical manifestation of that illustration falls short. I know. Did you know I'm not perfect? Don't tell anybody. It's a secret. Okay, it's not a secret. But these things happen, okay? And so you need to try everything out with your fabrics like this before you can move forward. So where were we? We are looking back at our mood boards and our concepts. We are researching different techniques that we can explore to put our mood boards and our ideas and put them into like actual tangible things. We are getting inspired by different techniques that are available to us, not taking things too literally, putting our own spin on things and designing cool things. These are some of the 3D samples that I created for this collection. I played around with quilting, different scales, different leathers. I had this idea of unfinishing the quilting, where it's just quilted in some sections and then not, but still having the polyfill. And then as I was quilting, I had this really cool brocade fabric and I quilted that, but it didn't seem enough. And so I added the studs. Okay, so this is kind of a process. And then I was thinking about putting together geometric shapes in a different way. So I created pailles, okay? These little holes are from when I was thinking about adding beads or studs to the ends of the pailles, and I didn't really like them, so I took them out. But then I was putting them on this brocade, and I was like, well, you can't even see the brocade, and this whole thing looks stupid. And so I put them on a more simple background fabric and a thinner fabric so that you could see, it would still move. I had this idea of doing cutouts, and I had those cool colors of silk blouse weights before. And so I thought if I took those really cool colors and made them into lining so that you could see them throughout the cutouts and the leather. And so we were playing with these sort of geometric shapes in different ways, quilting, cutting, scaling into pailles, right? And then I was thinking about sort of, remember how I was talking about the vertical lines and the crisscrossing vertical lines and that sort of thing. And I started thinking about basket weaving. And then I'm like, basket weaving, it's so Bottega Veneta, as in I like Bottega Veneta, but it's been done before. So what can I do to elevate it? And so I started adding intermittent chains. And then I was playing with different meshes and then incorporating the chains with the meshes so it has like a hard and soft feel. And at the same time, I was still trying to make things look not completely unisex androgynous, but nothing that is overtly feminine and overtly masculine, but something that could go either way depending on how you styled everything. I mean, this is where you play when you're not putting together an entire sweater. I did this. It ended up looking like a bikini top, but I mean, it's so holy that it just no longer reads fall winter. I mean, I guess you could if you layered it right, but this wasn't really what I was going for. But yeah, this is where you explore. Like, I look at this and I laugh because I think it is so ugly. Oh my God, stop looking at it. I don't recommend that you start using your final fabrics when you are developing your textures and design elements. Start with muslin because it's cheap. These leathers are not. So here's a hilarious thing. I was preparing for this video and I realized I'm completely out of muslin. So I'm not going to be doing a tutorial in muslin, but yeah, like when you're doing this quilting thing, you know, just take a piece of muslin and they don't have to be squares. They don't even have to be a repeating pattern. This is a marker with disappearing ink. All very 007 style. Okay, so later on it'll wear out. And you can come up with different quilting pattern designs. You know, so you can like wipe this off later even. Like maybe you want something more organic. And so you're gonna put together a quilting pattern like this. And then you're gonna take some of that fluffy cotton fill stuff, and you're going to pin it, and then you're going to take it to your sewing machine and then just sew along these lines. And you can play with different patterns. You can play with different surface fabrics. You can play with how much stuffing you want in your quilting. Like this one is really thin. Okay, this is just one layer of polyfill. You can add tons of polyfill and so that your quilting is super round. You can also play with different top stitching threads, and you can do a flat like white on white. You could do a contrast if you want to pick up another color from the rest of your collection, like maybe you love this chartreuse and so you get a really fat top stitching thread in this chartreuse color to do your quilting with. Or since we're playing with chains in this group, you can pull a few chains and maybe you're going to tack things down later, you know, pick stitch chains on top of your quilting, and then you can play with scale, color, all kinds of things, right? And so if you start doing these and do a bunch of experimental quilting embellished things in muslin, then you can start visualizing like what you like, you know, what you think are the best options that go with your original concept, and then move forward and make it in your final fabrics. Remember rule number 1 of design projects, keep everything. So don't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna do cutouts and then just do that and not explore. Okay? Take each thing, like something like this, I'll go, okay, I'm going to do squares, and then I'm going to do squares with the purple background, or I'm going to do round cutouts. Like these squares are to mirror the square quilting, but what if I had round pailles and then I had round cutouts? What if I had square pailles and square cutouts? Okay. What if I played with the scale of the basket weave so that it worked more closely with these things, where the scale of the basket weave was actually closer to this quilting? Okay, so don't forget to play with the scale. Don't forget to take these samples and pin them to your mannequin. Don't make these like little 2x2 swatches and think that you're going to get an idea as to the overall feel on a garment. Okay? Make big swatches. Pin them to the mannequin. These were originally bigger. I just trimmed them nicely for the book. Once you've done a lot of exploring, we're going to move back to the 2D. Remember my original sketches? They were pretty boring. They were basic shapes, kind of in the vein of what kind of shapes and proportions I want, you know, how hard or soft is my tailoring going to be, you know, how much skin am I covering, how fitted the garments are. You know, I wanted things to be androgynous and tailored, fall, winter. So I created shapes and silhouettes and proportions based off those concepts, but the interiors were pretty boring. Okay? And this is where I start taking these based off of my original concepts and then applying to my 2D sketches. Now, I had this original vest, and it's a simple vest. It's a nice shape, but then I took it to this, where I did a diamond quilting pattern, and then I would do a diamond cutout on the bottom. So the whole thing is lined in this chartreuse. The top is quilted. I probably will have to have some sort of cut line halfway. And then the bottom part would have the cutouts with the lining showing through. And at this point, I hadn't decided which collar I liked best, whether I was going to do a shawl collar that comes all the way down or to do a collarless lapel. Okay. And then I really liked this shape, this triangular shape of the collarless lapel. And so I started thinking about having these sort of panels, these lightly quilted panels on pants, kind of resembling like motorcycle pants. Because I was also thinking, you know, motorcycle leathers are a category of clothes that are, the styles are largely unisex and they're very utilitarian and functional. And so I was inspired a little bit by that. And then here is one of the basic dress shapes I was playing with before, but I applied this basket weave, but I put it on the diagonal. If you have watched my how to render print fabrics video, then you know that I use a palm to palm scale ratio to scale down things in real life into the size appropriate for the illustration. So, example, here's the palm of my hand, and the paillet, one round paillet, fits inside the palm. It's really close to the size of my palm. And so if this is the size of my palm on my croquis, then my paillet is going to be about that big. And that's how I would scale everything down. This one, okay, four of these fit inside my palm almost perfectly. And so if I were sketching this brocade quilt onto this croquis, then that's my palm size on my croquis. And so that would be the size of each of these little squares on my coats. Okay. I'll drop a link to that video and you can see a more thorough explanation of that if that confused you. But here I am developing more. So I'm taking these basic jacket shapes with a really sharp tailored shoulder, and I've kind of really fleshed out the pockets because I want a really utilitarian feel, and I wanted something where you can kind of abuse the crap out of a coat and it still be functional and beautiful, because furniture is sturdy. It's supposed to support all kinds of activities. Get your mind out of the gutter. I put rivets in the corners with double needle top stitching, and then a corner top stitch. I mean, these pockets are going to be super sturdy. It's going to have a zipper across the top, and then adding knit panels to tweed panels, and then using all of my fabrics in this kind of patchwork sort of thing. And then again, playing with the paillets, like, okay, how am I going to play with these? And then, you know, later on, I'm like, oh, these designs got a little bit feminine, but I am playing with the paillet placement. Here I am playing with the basket weave, but then also incorporating how I braided the knit and the fur together. Well, do I want to braid this with the leather, or do I want to braid this with the knit and the fur like I did with some of my sweaters? Do I want to do a short version? Even shorter version? No, we're doing longer. Maybe not maxi, you know, playing with all those things, okay, using the fur as the collar, quilting the leather and the lapels, and then in the sleeves and the shoulders, but only partially. And how I was playing with the partial quilting here, and also, again, the gigantic pockets. And then further playing with the fur, the quilting, the cutouts, and then the paillets in the dress underneath. And then I was also thinking, oh, maybe I want to quilt something sheer. If I quilted some clear vinyl and then I had little flowers inside with my polyfill. And then I got a little too crazy, a little too spring summer, and a little bit off concept. So I ditched that. But I was playing with the knits and this idea of having these very irregular ribs, where it's not like a neat row of rib stitching to finish the garment, but to make it kind of like jaggedy asymmetrical sun rays, reminiscent of kind of the sun beaming through the stained glass windows before. Giant, very couture editorial coat using the quilting and the cutouts. Same with this gown, and kind of a little shift dress using the same technique. And then playing with the mesh and the chains and the creating the knit and the fur, and just playing, mesh panels with the leather, and the chains would sit along the edges here like so. Just exploring Okay, using the different croquis, but kind of following this very tailored fall winter, patching all these various textures and colors together to create kind of this whole feel of how you decorate a living room where not every piece of furniture is matchy-matchy, but they all go together. You have all these textures that work together and everything is soft and fun and luxurious so that you want to touch it. All the fur, all the knits, all the nice leather, you know. Go back and forth. You're going to design some stuff and you're like, oh, I really love this detail. And I do. I ended up really loving this detail. And so maybe you go and knit yourself some samples of that and pin them to your mannequin and then take the swatch and then, you know, pin it like this on the mannequin. And then you're like, oh, you know what? I don't like that. Maybe I just pin it, turn it on the side and then pin it on a different place on the mannequin on its side. And you're like, oh, maybe I want it on the bias. Maybe I want all three on one garment and play. Because remember, at the end of the day, we are all about putting fabrics on bodies. Okay, the sketching is a skill set to help you put those fabric on bodies, but really our end goal is fabric on bodies. Super cool, beautifully designed and crafted fabric on all kinds of shapes of bodies, but it's fabric on bodies. And so you have to build things out of fabric and trims, pin them to dress forms, don't pin them to bodies because that hurts, and see what it's going to look like on the form. And then take that as inspiration to keep developing your designs. Go back. Maybe you don't like this. Maybe you need to play with the scale of things. Maybe you need to resource some trims. Like looking back, like looking at this and seeing how heavy these copper chains were, I think it would be better if I use something really thin like this because it's so lightweight and it will, you know, shimmy effortlessly with this thin mesh. However, if something is really thin like this, it also tangles really easily. And so you need to test those things out also. Make a swatch like this where you have all these chains that are sewn to your base fabric. Maybe you safety pin it along the collar of a t-shirt that you're wearing and just walk around the house with it and see how annoying it feels on your body. If you can't just walk around with a simple swatch on your neck and go about your day for half an hour with it, if it's that annoying, you probably shouldn't design it because it will be annoying to anybody else. So design here, go back, make new samples, come back, redesign with the things that you learned in your development process. Go back, make new samples until you're happy, until the cows come home, until your design director says, oh my God, enough. We need to stop now. There will definitely be a part then too when your boss is like, okay, we're good. Stop. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're like, well, Zoe, when you were talking to Dahe, like you guys were talking about how you have to color in your croquis so you know where all the fabrics are. We're going to get there. Okay. That's going to be part of the next video where we finish design development. We talk about editing and merchandising and kind of moving along into finalizing and presenting. Right? And that's going to be design process number 7. And that'll be later this summer, as you know. You know the drill. Please share, subscribe, like, all those beautiful ways you show me love. And if you have any questions, check the info box. If your answer is not there, leave me a comment below. I hope this video was helpful for you guys, and I will see you next time.